Thank you. We'll go to questions, starting with the Latvian radio television in the 6th row, please.
Latvian television, thank you for taking questions, and I have a question for both. There is increasing migrant pressure on Finland's eastern border with Russia. And do you see it as another hybrid attack, similar to what we have seen in Latvia? And is there a necessity for more coordination on NATO level to address that? Thank you.
As we are following this very closely, I actually met with the Finnish defense minister briefly on the margins of the EU defense ministerial meeting in Brussels earlier this week. He shared with me his assessments, his analysis, and his concerns about the increased number of refugees, asylum seekers at the border. So this is something we monitor very closely. The alliance is vigilant. Of course, at the first responder, or the Finnish authorities are responsible for managing the situation on the border, but we need to exchange information. We need to have the best possible common situational awareness, and then to take necessary actions if needed, whether that will be as NATO or as NATO allies or in other formats. That's a bit too early to say, depending on the developments, but we are closely following the situation also along the Finnish border.
Well, thank you. Let me just add that Latvian authorities are in close coordination with the Finnish authorities, as Latvia and Finland both share border with Russia. We have also coordination and information sharing with other EU and NATO member states that are having common border with Russia and Belarus. We are prepared to implement joint decisions if we can agree on the necessity for those. There are many options, from the border closing to restricting entry of citizens, but those measures will be decided by our own competent authorities based on analysis of the situation and based on joint assessment and based also on joint decisions. I would also say that we discussed with Secretary General the overall situation in the region, not only when it comes to the purely military point of view, but also from different hybrid attacks that we have seen lately. We were discussing the need to protect critical undersea infrastructure. We still remember what happened in October in the Baltic Sea. That incident is being investigated, but we are of the same opinion that we need to be prepared to respond to all kinds of hybrid challenges that we face. When it comes to the border situation, I do believe that regional cooperation, also the EU coordination, is needed. We've discussed this also a little bit yesterday when I met with the President of the European Commission, because also the European Union is playing a role in this regard. But I think that we are of the same opinion with the Secretary General that also NATO needs to look into the matter, but at this point those decisions should be taken by the national authorities of the countries that are bordering Russia.
Questions will go to Bloomberg in the 3rd row, please.
Natalia Drozdiak from Bloomberg. I had a question for both of you, if I may. I wanted to ask about support for Ukraine and the debate in the US Congress at the moment. What is your feeling if aid doesn't get passed for Ukraine? How dire is this for Ukraine's effort to fight back the Russians? Thank you.
Well, it is, of course, important that all allies continue to stand by the decisions we have made jointly. At the Vilnius summit, all heads of state and government, all NATO allies promised to stand by Ukraine, not only because it will be a tragedy for the Ukrainians if President Putin wins, but it will be dangerous for us. Because then the message will be that when authoritarian leaders use military force, when they violate international law, when they invade another country, they get what they want. And that will make the world more dangerous and us more vulnerable. So it is a national security interest of all NATO allies, also the United States, to prevent that from happening, to prevent President Putin from winning in Ukraine. And therefore I'm confident that the United States will continue to provide support to Ukraine. The message when I travel around in NATO capitals is that allies are ready to sustain and to step up their support. And just over the last days we have had new announcements from, for instance, Germany made significant new announcements of increased support just a few days ago. Other allies have also announced additional support. So I'm confident that that will be the case. Lastly, let me also say that we need to realize that the situation on the battlefield is difficult. Russia doesn't plan for peace, they plan for more war. We have also seen how Russia has tried to launch offensive operations around, for instance, Avdiivka. But the fact that the situation on the battlefield is more difficult than we hoped, that's not an argument against support. It's an argument in favor of more support to Ukraine. Because again, we cannot allow President Putin to win. Then let me also add that the Ukrainians have already made big victories. At the beginning of this war, most experts believed, and we also feared, that Ukraine would collapse in days and that Russia would control Kiev within weeks. The reality was that the opposite happened. The Ukrainians were able to push back Russian forces in the north, in the east, and in the south, and they have liberated half of the territory. So this is a big victory for Ukraine. That have liberated so much territory. It's a big victory for Ukraine that they have been able to inflict heavy losses on the Russian invaders. It is a big victory for Ukraine that Ukraine has prevailed as an independent sovereign nation in Europe. Russia has lost a lot. Ukraine is a strategic defeat for President Putin. He has not achieved what he wanted. So that's the background as we now continue how to provide or ensure that we continue to provide support to Ukraine.
It's almost impossible to add to what Jens just said. I think that this has been really perfect argumentation. Let me just say that, first of all, my country, Latvia, has provided military assistance to Ukraine that is worth more than 1% of GDP. And we are a small country. Of course, if we talk about millions of euros or millions of dollars, it's not a huge amount, but actually it shows the commitment that we, as the country that understands the danger of the Russian aggression, the danger of Russia not being stopped by Ukraine, in Ukraine, going further and challenging other neighboring countries. This country is currently aggressive. This country is mobilizing its economy, it's mobilizing its war machine, and I think it would be a huge mistake currently not to provide Ukraine with all kind of assistance, be it military, be it financial assistance, so that the government can function and all the services are being delivered. So I do hope that all allies, including the US and its Congress, do understand that at this point it is critical to help Ukraine in order to stop Russia and in order to actually keep the peace in Europe for years to come. There can be questions. How this assistance is spent, and those questions should be answered. But it does not change the big picture, and the big picture is that it's in the interests of Ukraine, it's in the interests of all NATO allies, including the United States, that Ukraine is successful combating the Russian Federation.
That concludes this press point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.